feel like labels should be for you. They should be something that puts a name to those struggles so you can say, oh, I'm not alone in this feeling. Like, this is a thing. This is not just me. This is not just me having a weird issue or something wrong with my personality. And it's not even wrong with you. It's just how your brain works. And unfortunately, some of it sucks and you have to work through it. Unfortunately, the society or things just aren't built for neurodivergent people, some of the things. So you just gotta make accommodations for yourself. That's huge.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Successful with ADHD. Today, I have an amazing guest, my one and only right-hand woman, Rhiannon Richards. She has been coaching with Brooke's executive assistant since 2020?
2020.
2020. So it's been 4 years and I could not run this company without her. She is our graphic designer. She is our person. She just does everything and she has helped evolve Coaching with Brooke so much. And she's learned so much about herself in the past 4 years that I can't wait for her to share on this podcast episode about her own neurodivergence. Is it ADHD? Is it not ADHD? Is it autism? Is it not autism? And how that's helped her in the workplace and what kind of strategies she's used to perform to her potential in the workplace as well. So warm welcome, Rhiannon.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is pretty much just an excuse for us to talk about mental health and psychology stuff. So everyone's just listening into our conversation is what it is.
Yes. And it's not like we don't talk about this all the time anyway. So this is just another Tuesday for Rhiannon and I. No big deal. So there are just so many nuances that I want to get into again on this podcast: mental health, how to hire, the differences in hiring you compared to other people we've hired in Coaching with Brooke. But Rhiannon, let's go back a little bit. Before joining the company, what was life like for you? What did you do? What did you know about your mental health?
Let's see. I mean, since I was born, I kind of knew that something's like a little bit different with me, that maybe I don't interact the same way other people do, or I don't think the same way. But recently I worked at Target I worked at the Red Retail for 7 years, and it was quite an experience. It was very different from working with Brooke and being in the neurodivergent space. And just, it's good. It's good to be in a place where people understand how your brain works and what makes you work better and really like put out your full potential, your superpowers we always talk about.
And it's interesting because I remember when originally hiring you, it was at an on-job basis and as-need basis. So I was paying you per worksheet that you were creating for 3C
I was
activation.
doing the 3C activation worksheets. Yep.
Yes, when we first started that, right? So if you've taken 3C activation, you can thank Rhiannon. If you've come to Coaching with Brooke, you can also thank Rhiannon.
Anything Coaching with Brooke you see has been me.
But I remember how much potential you had, and you had never worked as an executive assistant before, right?
Yeah.
And I know people say experience is helpful, what to look for in hiring. But when I hired you, it was totally different, and it's worked out for the best, for sure, for me and hopefully for you as well. And I remember when you started, you were doing the worksheets, but you were also working many hours for your previous job. And I remember things transpired in a way that was evident that you were stressed out because you were doing amazing work for the worksheets, but you weren't 100% emotionally present. I remember, when now I know it was stress.
Yeah.
But what do you think you would say, let's say, to someone who, and of course, we'll get more into it as we learn how the transition progressed, but what would you say to someone who is in a position where, because you were very good at graphic design, where you're at a place that is causing you stress, but you're also doing something else? Just, yeah, walk me through that.
I've gotten to the point of being like, just focus on one thing. Between myself and like between seeing Gabe and even other people at Coaching with Brooke, like we tend to split our focus on so many different things, and we can't put our focus into the one thing that like we're passionate about and we have the skills in. And like you said, like the skills were there, but I maybe couldn't perform to my full potential because I was so stressed with Target or with Red Retail and working, splitting my attention to both those things. Whereas now, full focus, and it makes such a difference.
Yeah. So was it 2020 or 2021?
Did I switch to full time for you? I think it was 2021.
2021. And when did you learn about looking for a diagnosis, or going for a diagnosis, I should say?
It was when I was in therapy. And like I said, I've always known my whole life that like there's something a little bit different, like I think differently. And I kind of knew it was neurodivergence once I started learning about that kind of stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been interested in psychology and mental health stuff, so it's always been a research and been there. But it was when I started therapy, probably 2021, that she actually had autism, and she was like an autism specialist, which was great. And she was able to, just in like explaining like my anxieties and my fears and just kind of what's going on in my head, she kind of came to the conclusion and told me like, I think you have autism. I'm pretty sure, because even just my experience of feeling different and like knowing that there's something I need to hide, because like I kind of knew if people see this way that I act, they're not gonna like me, or they're gonna act against me or whatever. So I knew it was like a survival thing to like put on that mask and be what they wanted you to be. Hide that, even though you know that it's different.
So, for everyone listening, Rhiannon got an official autism diagnosis from her therapist and self diagnosed beforehand. But since getting that diagnosis, because before that you said you were masking, you knew you felt different. What's changed for you?
I mean, at first, I noticed the symptoms more. And like, it honestly got worse before it got better. And like, the sensitivities got worse. It's one of my big things is sound sensitivity, especially. Like, loud noises like dogs barking, like rattles my brain. It hurts physically. And like,
Yeah.
that was another thing that made me realize maybe I'm a little bit different, because as a kid, I'm covering my ears and like, ow, ow, make it stop. And my parents are like, what is your problem? What? That doesn't hurt. And just realizing like, sound doesn't hurt other people. Rubbing on my skin a bunch doesn't hurt other people. And it's like,
Yeah.
I thought other people were just like pushing through these feelings. But I guess that kind of realizing all those things, and now I have to re-push through those feelings by learning how to manage rather than just pushing and being like, oh, just uncover your ears, just deal with it, just put on a straight face. Like, I'll throw in my loops now, or put on my headphones, or, I have the tools. It was definitely, it's such a great learning process of just figuring out yourself and like what you specifically need. Because
It's that awareness.
it's the awareness. It's so huge.
Right. Like there's nothing you can really do to make changes that are life lasting unless you understand how your brain works and how, things need to be differentiated for you, for
100%.
everyone, but specifically for your brain. So,
Yeah.
Rhiannon, like your life has changed because you figured out ways to work with your brain. What else has changed for you?
Along the lines of just awareness and like learning to listen to and honor your body, because we spend our whole lives learning how to mask and we hide our pain and our emotions. Like I said, I would just uncover my ears and put on a straight face. But we have to learn to honor that, like using headphones, using a heating pad when you have pain, and just listening to your body and not shutting it down and hiding it away, because that causes burnout, and that burnout builds up and it makes it harder to do things and harder to manage all of the little symptoms when you're so bogged down by everything. So listening to it without shutting it down and hiding it away, it makes life start to feel less tense and less straining. It gets you to a point that you have the strength to kind of pull on your big kid pants and live a life outside of the burnout, and you're not exhausted. You're not too exhausted to pull on the big boy pants and go out and do it. So just listening.
You said listening, right? But how do you know when you're starting to reach that burnout? Because autistic burnout is a popular term on social media right now, at least
Yep.
for us, because we're in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you start feeling in your body?
I mean, the anxiety increases is what I've noticed recently. It's, like I said, it's hard after a lifetime of pushing all of this stuff down and being like, oh, this is nothing. Everyone else deals with this, so you should be fine. Not everyone else is dealing with it.
Yeah. So for you, it's like for a lifetime of just pushing things down and pushing things down and pushing things down and just putting on your,
Put on
boots,
the
right?
smile, put on the straight face. Yep.
And move forward, right? Now you're kind of like pulling those things out from the ground and you're like, okay, I don't need to deal with this. I don't need to deal with this. Like peeling back that onion layer.
Exactly. It's difficult. It's hard to say like how to even start that process, because it's like just those little things that you've always pushed down. Like, I don't have a good example, but something that gives me anxiety and I've just been pushing through this thing, and I need to kind of identify like, okay, all of this like extra energy inside of me is hurting me, and it's making it harder to focus on these other things. So I need to address this other anxiety first, even if maybe I think, oh, that's stupid, or I don't need to deal with that kind of thing, because it's all been very ingrained.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed about working with you since 2020 and you getting your diagnosis in 2021, it's definitely been an evolution for you and for us. And I notice more in the latter part of us working together that you have vocalized more. You have
Yes.
not shut down, not taken on more than you can handle. You have been asking for clarity rather than trying to go through the motions. What would you say has gotten you to that point?
Working for you and feeling more
I
comfortable
promise
and
that
more
wasn't
secure.
a planned question.
Well, honestly, because my only experience has been at Red Retail and here, and there they kind of it was just the place that I was at and kind of the management that I had, so it was very much my situation, but it definitely goes into autism as well, and not being able to vocalize your struggles and your problems. And when I was at my old job, whenever I ask questions, they're like, you should know this, you should know the answer, just do it, kind of thing. So I was very much shut down and very much like, okay, I shouldn't be asking questions. And of course, my masking self, I'm going to take that and realize no one wants questions from me. That's annoying. So don't do that. So.
Oh, so the negative self-talk that made you stop asking questions.
Yup.
The shame.
Yup.
How old are you now? If you don't mind
26.
sharing. 26. So you learned at 22 that you were autistic. For those people listening out there right now who have suspected they have autism or are just learning they have autism, what would you recommend to them?
Go to a psychologist for sure. They know.
Mm-hmm.
They can pick apart your brain and tell you that's what this is. This is what this is. This is anxiety. You should be managing this like this. And if you can't afford it, like books and reliable sources. Obviously, like, it's good to follow social media, things like this, to learn terms and to kind of, for self-help kind of stuff and like encouragement. But I definitely recommend researching official information when it comes to learning, getting more in depth with your brain, especially with autism. Absolutely. I feel like there's less information for adults out there. There was many places that I called and I was like, they had like autism specialists, and I called them. I was like, hey, can I get a consultation? Can I get maybe a diagnosis? And they're like, for who? And I was like, for me. And they immediately go, oh, well, we don't do it for adults. So we typically, they just totally shut me down. Like, oh, well, you're talking on the phone to me right now, so clearly you're not autistic. Like,
wow.
Was the vibe I got. They didn't say that outright, but like, it was just that flip of like, oh, no, not happening. Like,
right. So first of all, we know autism is a spectrum. It does not look the same in anyone. No two brains in the whole wide world look the same. So for you to say, or, you know, in more or less words, that you can't have autism because you're speaking to me on the phone.
And it's funny because that's such an internalized ableism thing that I had growing up. Like, oh, there can't be something wrong with me. I talk just fine. I communicate with people just fine. But that's actually something I wanted to bring up. People, when they refer to autism, will usually refer to it as like, you're high functioning autistic, you're low functioning autistic. But that's so harmful.
We don't use those terms anymore.
Yeah. That's so harmful because you would probably look at me and be like, oh, she's high functioning. She's talking and she looks normal. But I like to use support needs because my support needs are a lot higher than I would like to admit. If I didn't live with people, I would miss so many meals. I wouldn't cook for myself. I would struggle just to do so many things. Like, that's a support need of mine. Just having people to kind of help me talk things out and regulate emotions is a support need. Like,
and people you trust to do that.
People you trust, yes, 100%.
So you mentioned the support needs at home. What if we transition, if you don't mind, into the support needs at work?
Oh yes, those are high too, aren't they? You would know all about those.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I have support needs too as an ADHDer. And I wanted to also clarify for everyone listening too that Rhiannon does not have ADHD. She only has autism. I don't want to say she only has autism, but she is autistic without ADHD.
And I think I know that because I can sit here and stare at a wall and entertain myself with my own thoughts, just going and going for hours. Whereas if my boyfriend who has ADHD sat beside me, after 2 seconds, he'd be like, needing to move and just like, yeah.
Well, also, again, I can't diagnose, but I've worked with you for a pretty long time. And I think I know you well enough to know that you really do not have ADHD. There are a lot of people who have autism, and I'm using the term interchangeably because some people like to be referred to as autistic, right? And some people like to be referred to as someone with autism. But there are a lot of 50 to 75% of people who have autism also have ADHD.
Very comorbid.
And you're not one of them. Yeah. But you happen to be working for an ADHD company.
Which is funny, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk to me then. Let's get into it a little bit more. And for our listeners, what are things that work for you in this executive assistant role online environment?
That's a hard question. It's a hard question I wasn't prepared for.
Okay.
What works
Well,
for me? Go ahead.
if you want to think about that, because I know that you do like preparation, not being put on the spot. So think about that for a little bit and we could always come back to it. But one thing that I've noticed, and feel free to confirm or deny, is the fact that we put our brain dumps, our tasks, the things we need to talk about on a task management board. And in this case, it's Asana, and then you transfer it to Notion because that's what you like to use. And that's great. Instead of you and I being in communication 24/7.
Definitely. I was thinking, like, when you were explaining the executive functions and you're like, oh, you don't struggle with them as much. I'm like, but I feel like I do. And the only reason I am together is because I put everything on that Notion or everything on Asana. Like, everything is on either of those two things. So I don't have to worry about, oh my God, am I missing a task? Am I missing this? Am I missing that? Because I know I write everything down and I make sure to. That's like my biggest tool.
And you execute it and you put it down right away before you forget, correct?
Exactly.
Most of the time. Yeah.
That's the biggest thing is just writing it down right away. And having Notion is great because I have the app. And just anything on a cloud is so wonderful for ADHD and autistic brains because you can just pull up your phone and make a note right here. And then later I can come on my computer and it's there. And it's just the important thing is having it all there and all in one place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What else do you think helps you? Because the coaches might text you and say, hey, question about this, but you're in the middle of another task. Like, how do you deal with that task switching?
I'm bad. I just kind of jump. I try to if I'm in the middle of something that I need to have my full focus, I will do my best to just ignore that for now. And I'll almost always just add a note on my Notion because I just have this long running checklist for each day. So I can just add to it, remove to it, check it off. So if I'm in the middle of something and someone texts me, I'll hit enter, do a new task right underneath the one I'm working on and say, Brooke text. So then I get back to you as soon as I finish whatever I'm super focused on. But otherwise, I'm kind of bad and I jump around.
Okay.
If I had ADHD, that would be really bad and I wouldn't be able to refocus myself again. But
or complete the task 100%, right?
Or complete the task 100%. That's where it super helps me just to use Notion and I just make notes of everything I'm doing. And every time I leave off on something or if I need to step away, I'm going to make a note and say, finish form, finish email, whatever I'm doing. It's just a matter of being really diligent with that because I can't rely on my brain to remember everything. And I'm sure it'd be worse with ADHD.
Yeah. So something just popped into my mind. I guess I had a moment. And we have been changing some of our, we usually keep our same processes, systems. And I would imagine that would be helpful for you or for anyone who's trying to make sure that they know what the process is, right? But at the beginning of this year, end of last year, we started implementing a bunch of new things, right? And in my opinion, you were able to be on top of those new things and implement them without emotional distress in front of me, at least.
I was going to say, not on here, not in this space. That's certainly, that brings up two things. I even wrote down how a change in plans takes me 3 to 5 business days to adjust and accept.
Wow.
Not actually, it's just a joke, but it does it takes time for me to adjust to changes. Recently, when you told me the more efficient way to track my time on Toggl, when you first told me, I think you remember in the meeting, I was like,
yes.
What? What do you mean I can just do it this way? And it literally, I had to think about it all weekend. And then come Monday, I was like, okay, it's a fresh week, fresh start. Let's just try this. And it was fine. It worked.
Well, just for context for people, Rhiannon was tracking every single task that she was doing manually using Toggl, but then she was inputting each specific thing into Google Sheet. So I had a thought like, hey, why don't you just copy and paste what's in Toggl? It has a layout, right? It has a summary.
It gives me everything that I'm typing.
It gives you everything that you're typing. So it takes away from the time you type, and just copy and paste or screenshot it and put it in your timesheet. Yep. And it took you some time to
come to terms with it.
It wasn't to process it because you knew what was happening. It was to come to terms with the change, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think back to when we switched our systems from Coach Accountable to Wix, and even that was like, it wasn't as hard because it was such a long process that I had all that time to like get used to it all. And I was the one setting it up, so I was the one getting used to it every day for 3 months.
Right.
But it was a big change, and it was like, it was nervous. It made me nervous. It's like,
made you nervous, but you did an amazing job on it, and you organized it perfectly in a way that I could never do, right? Like you made a beautiful Google Sheet with all the links that every coach needs, what I need, what you need, and we can all come back to this centralized system, which helps all of our neurodivergent brains to have a hub for everything. Yes. But what I want to share, though, is going back to all of the changes. We had the Wix change, we had marketing change. We had lots of changes all at once. And usually that's not great for any company to implement a bunch of new changes. But you seemed from the outside like you were going along, you did all the things, right? And then all of a sudden, recently, when we stopped all those changes, you had like a freak out moment. You were like, I don't know if I can do this, right? And I'm like, I don't even know how you did the changes in the first place because that was so much. And you were like, I think my brain has finally caught up to the fact that I just did all of that.
Yup. Oh, it hits me sometimes. I go through that a lot in therapy because that brings up a lot of old things that were just unprocessed and just, yeah. Once you finally calm down enough to like, you're at that baseline again and you can finally process and you're like, oh goodness.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. So much. So talk a little bit more about what helps you at work.
Definitely. Sorry to keep talking about you, Brooke, but it just makes such a huge difference to have a boss who you can have open communication with. I think that is the most important thing. And someone that understands that you have struggles. I think it's really valuable to open up to your team and your boss about, it depends on your situation, but it can be really helpful to open up about your executive dysfunctions and the specific things. Like maybe you struggle with the time management and you do really great in all your other areas, but maybe you have troubles with getting projects done on time. And like, rather than just continuing to suffer and just try or just whatever you're doing, like, just do it. I can just do it. Like, try something else. Tell them, make them aware, like, hey, this is something I'm struggling with. Is there something we can do here to make this work? And maybe they can, I don't know about deadlines right now, but they can give you something, or they can understand at the very least when you miss a deadline that it's not because you're slacking off or something happened. It's great when Brooke understands when I have anxiety over something and she realizes something isn't done and she's not sitting there going, what the hell? Why isn't this done? What is she not doing? She understands, oh, she's so overwhelmed right now. She's got all these other things that are stressing her out, so it's like her brain can't even focus on this thing. So it's that communication and understanding in the workplace is so valuable.
Yes. And I like the fact that you said, you obviously have to be careful on when you disclose and when you communicate. But if you know that you are in an environment where neurodivergence is accepted
Yes,
and you feel safe and you trust your boss or your colleagues, then, you feel more comfortable disclosing and not being penalized
exactly.
for
It
it.
kind of makes me think of a situation where I was with Garrett's parents and his family, and they're not so accepting of neurodivergence. But
Garrett's her boyfriend, by the way.
sorry, yes, I mentioned him once earlier.
Thank you.
Um,
I didn't remember.
so I was out with his family somewhere. Oh, it was at a gun range, and oh my god, gun ranges are my hell. It is so loud and just. I had like earplugs in and the headphones on, and it was still just the overstimulation of like the feeling from the guns and all of the bang, 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 bang everywhere. And it was so loud. I was so overstimulated.
Mm.
I had to step away so many times. And then at the end of it, instead of coming up to them and saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I have autism, so that's why this happened," instead I just said, "I have sensory sensitivities, so sound sets me off." And they both went, "Oh, it's just like grandpa. Whenever we're in a busy restaurant, he gets overwhelmed by all the sounds." I'm like, "Thank you." And they understood, and I didn't have to bring neurodivergence into it and have them
Yeah.
think whatever
Talk
conceptions
about,
they have or have to talk about it and explain these things.
yes.
"Oh, you have autism? How come you're speaking so normally? How come you look this way?" Like, don't have to get into all that.
It's funny because you and I talk about how liberating labels can be
Yeah,
for someone with autism or someone who's autistic or someone with ADHD or anything, right? But at the same time, it's your choice if you want to go around sharing that with everyone, right?
100%. I feel like labels should be for you. They should be something that puts a name to those struggles so you can say, "Oh, I'm not alone in this feeling. Like, this is a thing. This is not just me. This is not just me having a weird issue or something wrong with my personality." Like, and it's not even wrong with you. It's just how your brain works. And unfortunately, some of it sucks and you have to work through it. Unfortunately, the society or things just aren't built for neurodivergent people, some of the things. So you just gotta
Mm-hmm.
make accommodations for yourself. That's huge,
Mm-hmm.
as just accommodating yourself before. And
Yes.
yeah.
Accommodate yourself. Yeah, we talk about that. Like I just had a talk with IBM and we talk about low cost accommodations for a
Yeah.
neurodivergent workplace, right? Like you can start there and see how you can meet the person where they are, every single person where they are, right? Everyone should have accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
Just like everyone should have an IEP at school. It's an individualized education plan. No two children learn the same way. You had said accommodations, and then I remember when you had first started working for Coaching with Brooke, your hours were earlier,
Yes.
right?
And I was
Let's
not
talk
doing
about
well
that.
with them. I was not doing well with my early hours. My brain just like I couldn't function that early. I could not communicate that early. I think we tried to do like early meetings, and in the meetings, I'm just like, like so dazed and not here yet. So I switched once I started doing more full time, and I set my schedule. That was another big thing is I didn't have a schedule at one point, and that's not good. Don't do that to
hmm
yourself.
hmm Right. You need predictability.
Yes, that too. Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I set my schedule for 10 o'clock to start, and that made all the difference in the world because I can function and be present in meetings and understand, and yeah, that's huge.
Yes, you did your best. You do your best work later on in the day, and not everyone is that way. Some people are early morning people, and some people like to start their day later. And I think that's huge. On one of the episodes with the sleep doctor for Successful with ADHD, he was talking about how someone almost got fired from a job, and then he started working with her in her position, and the boss shifted her hours from 8 to 5 to 10 to 7
Hmm.
And not only did he not fire her a week later, had he already planned that, she saved her job and then the sleep doctor worked with other people in the business to make sure that their focus hours were optimized.
Wow. That's amazing. It makes a difference. It makes a huge difference. I've heard things about circadian rhythm and how a lot of ADHDers, I'm sure autistic as well, they have a different circadian rhythm from what is stereotypical, like the 9 to 5 functioning. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I see it in a lot of ADHDers, a lot of my friends, and a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
people, you kind of like that cognitive high, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
your highest functioning cognitive time. A lot of people have noticed are around like 3 and 4 o'clock that it's like
Mm.
their best, and that kind of starts to
Mm-hmm.
decline after that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's true
Mm-hmm.
for me. I think 3 and 4 o'clock, I'm like super into it, and then something happens, and right after 4 o'clock, I'm like, brain levels just dropping. But yeah,
Fair.
finding that rhythm of like when you have your highest energy and your highest cognitive function, and if you can get into a workplace that accommodates that, that's ideal.
Yeah. And I know, like, for me, since I have ADHD and I'm constantly thinking about things and ideas, right? The biggest thing that has helped me in our work relationship is writing things down onto Asana, because I know it's out of my head and onto this space that is a reliable source of you and I, because we have our accountability check-ins on Mondays and Thursdays, and we're going to look at it and we're going to review it.
100%.
If I didn't have that, I probably would not be able to keep it inside of me any longer. And I would probably be texting you all the time and you'd be like, ah.
And that would overwhelm me. I
You
think
think?
that's one of my accommodations is not having texts all the time. It's
Amazing.
awesome. Makes a huge
Amazing.
difference.
So, yes, one last thing that I want to just talk about is you have a boyfriend with ADHD and you have autism. How is that dynamic? How do you?
There's a lot of like there's a lot of conflictions and a lot of overlaps, and there's a lot of times that he just overstimulates me because he's got the high energy and he's poking at me and trying to get his dopamine out of being around me. And I'm just like, no,
Leave
not
me
right
alone.
now, please. A lot of that, a lot of the overlaps, like I said, like we'll have similar foods that we like or the similar activities that we like to do and how we can both hyper focus on things. And something that's with neurodivergent couples a lot is parallel play. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Tell me more.
It's just it's it's like body doubling, but just for fun. Like
Mm.
he's got his computer behind my screen there, and we love to just be in the same room doing our own separate things. And that's kind of like a love language. It's a way we bond. And like,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. I love that. I also love being in the same room as my husband who has ADHD and other neurodivergences. And for me, it's that quality time.
Yeah. Yeah, I love quality time. That's a big love language of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, what would be your number one success tip when it comes to the workplace and personal life, when discovering you have autism or you're autistic or you have it and you're trying to communicate and navigate life with it?
Definitely. I think, like I said earlier, just learning how to listen to your body, because it's been so beaten out of us to just deal with it, just put on a straight face, just push through it. It's a process to learn when your body is feeling anxiety and then saying, okay, why am I anxious right now? What is the thing that's truly bothering me? And learning to dissect it and go from there. Identifying emotions, I think, is step one. realizing, I'm not working at my full potential right now. I am blank. And just learning to fill in that blank and then dissect it from there. But it's huge.
Wonderful. Rhiannon, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Successful with
having
ADHD.
Me.
I know we've spoken about it for a while, and I'm so glad we made it work. Rhiannon Richards, everyone. She's amazing. Yeah, I could not be operating without you. I know that other people see that in us as well. The amazing work that you do that bleeds into the millions of lives that are impacted every day with ADHD and autism.
Thanks for having me here and on the team. And it's a privilege to be able to impact so many people. And I love it. I love being here.
We love having you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.